Thinking about how men behaved in matters of love and courtship in medieval times already takes us into a world very different from our own. Now, if we narrow the lens to look at men who were already past 50, the picture changes even more, gaining layers we can barely imagine today. It is almost like looking through an old stained glass window where the light filters in a very particular way, coloring each scene with tones that now seem exotic to us. Longevity, to begin with, was not guaranteed. Reaching 50, or even 60 or 70, was in itself a mark of a certain privilege. It was not just luck, but often status, access to better food, a safer home, perhaps less manual labor. This naturally applied more to lords, nobles, high-ranking clergy, and wealthy merchants. A peasant, even if he survived the hardships of childhood and youth, rarely reached that age with the same vitality or social capital. So, a man in this age range, say a landowner, a widowed baron, a wealthy burgher who had built his fortune in the wool or spice trade, was not an impulsive youth. He had lived, he had experience, and in most cases, he already had a history. Perhaps a wife who had died in childbirth or from disease, perhaps grown children, perhaps even grandchildren. The idea of flirting in the modern sense, with all its lightness and search for individualistic romance, was almost an abstraction for most people. Marriage was, above all, a contract, an alliance, a means of consolidating power, land, wealth, or ensuring the continuation of a lineage. And for an older man, these aspects were often even more pronounced. The first thing to understand is that attraction was not primarily based on youthful beauty or an ideal of romantic love, though these things were not entirely absent. For a man of 50 or older, the search for a new wife was largely a matter of practicality and maintaining his status quo. He needed someone to manage his household, care for any remaining children, and crucially, perhaps bear new heirs. His children from a previous marriage might already have families of their own, but the pressure to have a direct heir, especially if he were a noble and his lineage was at risk, was immense. Thus, infant mortality was terrifyingly high, so having many children was a strategy of family survival. A man of this age already possessed substance. He had land, a title, a fortune, a network of contacts. That was his greatest trump card in the medieval courtship game. What he offered a woman, or rather her family, was not fiery, youthful love, but security, stability, and the possibility of social advancement. Often the bride would be significantly younger than he was. This was neither uncommon nor considered strange. A young woman of 15 or 16 might be married to a man of 50 or 60, or even older, if the union brought substantial benefits to her family. For a family with several daughters and limited dowries, marrying one to a wealthy, established man, even an older one, was a very attractive solution. He represented a safe harbor, a promise of prosperity. The courtship process, therefore, began long before any personal contact between the man and the woman. It was parents, uncles, guardians, and intermediaries who initiated the conversations. Envoys, letters, negotiations over dowry, and accountants were the tools of this first stage. The older man, with his reputation already established, his power and wealth already known, did not need to prove himself in the same way a young man without fortune or status did. His courtship was largely the demonstration of his ability to provide, to protect, and to elevate the social standing of the woman and her future offspring. He came as a complete package, a life already built. And the woman? What was she looking for? Rarely was it true love as idealized in troubadour songs, which incidentally were more directed toward forbidden passion or platonic love than practical marriage. She sought, above all, security. Life was uncertain and dangerous, famine, disease, war. A good marriage was a lifeline. An older husband with well-managed lands, a strong castle, loyal servants, and wealth, offered refuge from that uncertainty. He might be an experienced widower who had already dealt with the responsibilities of a household and a lordship. That meant she would enter an already functioning structure, perhaps with experienced servants and an established routine, instead of building everything from scratch with a young husband still climbing the social ladder. Moreover, the position of lady of a castle or large estate came with a considerable degree of power and autonomy. Although subordinate to her husband, She would be the head of the household, responsible for many daily operations, managing stores, overseeing servants, supervising the education of children. For some women, the prospect of managing a great household, holding a position of respect and influence, could be more attractive than the uncertainty of marriage to a young man with fewer resources and less experience. An older husband, perhaps less inclined toward military adventures or long journeys, might offer a more predictable life. If we think of courtship as the process by which a man convinced a woman and her family of his value, for these older men, that value lay far more in their material and social substance than in physical attributes or poetic skill. He did not need to be a gallant knight tipping a feathered hat. He was the lord of the fief, the owner of the mines, the master of the trade that guaranteed bread and shelter. His age, rather than being a disadvantage, could even be seen as an asset, a symbol of wisdom, experience, and unquestioned authority. There was also the religious dimension. The Catholic Church, which dominated medieval life, allowed marriage and remarriage, though there were rules and sometimes dispensations to negotiate, especially if the couple shared distant kinship ties. For an older man, perhaps already with children, having a legitimate wife was important not only for household management, but also for reputation and social order. Living without a lawful wife could lead to behavior deemed sinful by the church and the production of illegitimate heirs, which complicated the transmission of property and titles. An older man's approach often involved gifts, not only to the woman, but to her family: jewelry, fine fabrics, land, promises of support. It was an exchange of value, an investment in alliance. The wooing was conducted through his representatives, who presented the terms of the contract, financial guarantees, and promises of future security. The idea that the older man might have deep romantic love for his young bride, or vice versa, was not the priority. Of course, after marriage, shared life, raising children, and daily coexistence could, and often did, create genuine affection. But the starting point was convenience and strategy. Even so, we cannot completely dismiss the human element. Even in such a pragmatic world, people were still people. There were cases of passion, of mutual attraction. An older man might possess charisma, intelligence, or kindness that drew a woman to him. A woman might be charming and spirited, awakening affection in a mature man. But these were perhaps bonuses, not the foundation. The foundation was solidity and position. Imagine a man in his early 50s, let us call him Sir Reginald, a widowed knight with a castle and several villages under his control. His adult children are already married, but he feels alone. His household needs a lady, and perhaps he longs for more heirs to further cement his legacy. He does not attend balls to flirt. He sends a trusted man, perhaps a chaplain or advisor, to speak with the father of Lady Isolde, a 17-year-old daughter of a less prosperous neighboring baron. The chaplain does not praise Sir Reginald's handsome smile or charming gray hair. He details Sir Reginald's income, the number of his men, the fertility of his lands, the solidity of his reputation, the generous dower he promises a widow, and what he expects in Isolde's dowry. The conversation is about assets, alliances, protection. Isolde's family, in turn, weighs the advantages and disadvantages an older man might mean. She will not share as many years with him, but the immediate benefit of marrying their daughter to a man of such wealth and power may be irresistible. The family would rise socially, they would gain a powerful ally, and if Sir Reginald were to die, Isolde would become a wealthy widow with an enviable position. The prospect of becoming a rich and independent widow, with her own fortune and influence, was one of the great attractions of marrying an older, established man. It was a way of securing a safe future for herself, even if the marriage itself was not founded on love. Thus, the complexity of courtship for medieval men over 50 went far beyond any romantic notion we might hold. It was a crucible of pragmatism, social strategy, economics, and the relentless need to maintain and expand family lineage and patrimony. Age did not necessarily signify decline. It signified consolidation of power, resources, and history. And in a world where survival and status were the true pillars of lasting unions, older men, those who had withstood time, often held the strongest cards in their hands.